again, remember that at the end of the day, Burning Man is really just camping in the desert. So if you think about it from that level, I think it becomes a lot less intimidating. And for a lot of these minor things, like you can definitely ask around, you can research, like there's plenty of information out there and you should be totally good with that. This is Modern Day Hippie. We are your homies who've done nearly every drug under the sun. Over 600 psychedelic trips and nearly every kind of bender you can possibly imagine have armed us with a universe of knowledge. I'm Yuki, and with my co-host Reggie, we talk about how we do drugs in a responsible, safe, and fun way to improve our lives. Before we dive in, and so we don't get sued, a quick legal disclaimer.
This podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. Our goal is to educate and inform others about the realities of substance use in an engaging and entertaining format. We share these experiences so you can learn from them without trying them yourself. By listening to this podcast, you agree not to attempt to recreate anything found in this episode or in any of our other content. We are not confessing to any acts stated in this podcast. The content in this episode should not be treated as factual or real in any way.
With that, we welcome you through our portal and hope you enjoy the show. What's up, hippies? Hope you're having a vibey day so far. It's your boy Yuki here today with a solo episode. And this one is extremely special to me because I get to talk about one of my favorite topics in the world, Burning Man. And even more specifically, it's how to get yourself to Burning Man. What does it take? What do you need to know? And my hope is that by the end of this episode, you'll have kind of a few mental notes or written, highly recommend that, on what you actually need to do to get yourself to Burning Man, whether it's this year, whether you're looking a few years into the future. It's never too early, honestly, to think about it because it can really be a long journey depending on how you think about it. So hope you guys enjoy today's show. Now, there's probably two types of listeners who are listening to this. Number one, you just found this podcast. You're one of our subscribers. Thank you guys so much for listening. And you're probably watching this because you're curious. And so all your questions will be answered. Now, the second type are personal friends of mine. If I have sent you this episode to listen to, then I absolutely 100% think that you belong on the playa at Burning Man. And I hope this gives you all the information that I've kind of been piecing together here and there. And I just wanted to have one definitive resource for everybody to know my take on what it takes to go to Burning Man. So without further ado, I'll give you guys a quick intro on the event, and then we'll go through my three kind of high level things that you need to think about and get in order to get yourself to Playa, which Playa is the big desert essentially where Burning Man happens. So you'll hear me refer to it as Playa or Black Rock City, which is the technical name of the city. And then Burning Man is the event itself. Now, the thing that makes Burning Man so special is that it takes quite a bit of work to get there. Burning Man is not a vacation by any means. And for a lot of people, it's absolutely draining, exhausting, challenging, but it also can be the most rewarding thing that you might ever do. It's not organized by a big corporation. You're not paying a bunch of money for, Insomniac to like put on this kick-ass festival and you just go and relax and everything's provided for you. No, it's honestly the opposite of that. So Burning Man is run by the Burning Man organization, which is a nonprofit whose sole responsibility is to make sure that this event happens every year. And it is a massive undertaking in terms of getting the permit for the land every year, for building the man and the temple, which are the two kind of key installations that exist there every year. And then all the way to organizing the city itself, where the camps are placed, putting up street signs. It is literally a city that needs to be put together by an organization. And so all of the money that you spend on tickets for the event goes into the organization to make these things happen. Now, the preface and the reason why I say that it is a lot of work is because it really is a journey to get yourself there. Like, yes, you could just stumble your way into a ticket, but even if you do that, if you're not adequately prepared, you could really be getting yourself into a sticky situation. So now to dive into kind of the three very high level things that you need to think about when you're looking at going to Burning Man. Number one are tickets. Tickets to Burning Man are awarded largely in a lottery system for most people. And what you need to know is that there are really no like special tickets to Burning Man. There's no like VIP or GA plus. Really, there's two main types of tickets. There's the ticket that gets you into the event itself. It'll get you through, the line of cars, and they'll check your tickets and they'll let you in. It's ticket type number one. And number two is a car pass, which you need to buy whether you're driving in a normal car, whether you're coming in an RV. You need a car pass. I think on average, the past few years, the base price for a attendee ticket was like $650 to $700. And then a car pass was, I want to say, around $250. So those are really the main tickets that exist. You'll hear about different tiers of tickets, but don't let that confuse you. So the reason the different tiers exist, you might hear about like FOMO tickets, for example. These are the exact same tickets that get you into the event. They just go on sale at different times. And more importantly, they're more expensive than those base, $650 to $700 tickets that I was talking about. It is the same ticket. The reason it's called FOMO sale is because if you can't figure out a way to find a ticket, or you don't get lucky enough to get one in the initial lottery when the tickets go live for purchase, people who have FOMO will shell out, up to $1,500 for these tickets. That's usually the highest tier of these FOMO tickets. Besides that, there are a few exceptions with like early access passes, steward sales. These are really for camps where people need to get to the event earlier than it officially opens. And those, your first year, you probably won't have to worry about, though if you get into a camp situation, that you might have access to that. As far as the logistics and timeline for the tickets, it's honestly pretty straightforward. So you just have to make a Burning Man account on the Burning Man website. It's totally free. You put in your email, all that jazz. And then there's the main ticket sale, which usually happens around mid to late April. And you'll actually have to register for the main ticket sale a few weeks in advance. So it's literally just logging into your account, clicking a button to register for the sale, and then you'll be registered. And then you will have to log on the day and time which the tickets go live to get in the queue. Now, this queue is essentially where this lottery system happens. It can feel like an absolute mess. And honestly, most people will not get tickets in that main sale. I think for the main sale, they allocate, I want to say anywhere between like 30,000 and 50,000 tickets, which sounds like a lot, but there are way more people who want to go to Burning Man. And because there's always a lot of hype around that main ticket sale, people will buy up as many tickets as they possibly can. I believe it's a max of 2 per account, 2 like human tickets and 1 vehicle ticket. But people will buy up extras because they know they might need them for the camp. And so my first year going to Burning Man, which was last year, we didn't get our tickets on the main sale. We didn't get the lottery. And the most important thing for you to know is that that is absolutely not a problem. And that's honestly not something you need to stress about. One of the best pieces of advice I got around planning to go to Burning Man is that regardless of whether you get a ticket in April in that main sale or not, still fully plan on going, still get all your ducks in a row and assume that you will have a ticket, because I have never heard of a single time where somebody intended on going to the event and wasn't able to get a ticket in time. The reason for this being is because, like I said, there's a lot of hype when tickets go on sale. And so people will buy up tickets in April, not even fully knowing if they're going to be able to go to the event at the end of August. And so as you go closer to August, more and more tickets will kind of enter circulation and things like that. The other cool thing about Burning Man resale tickets is that very rarely, basically never, will you actually buy them through a StubHub or one of those platforms. In fact, I would say those are usually scams. It is very much a like peer-to-peer system. It's building your network, asking around like, oh, do you know anyone who has a ticket? And just kind of, asking around in the community. And in the Burning Man website, the platform that they use for the tickets, there's also a very simple like peer-to-peer transfer service for transferring both your human tickets and your vehicle tickets between, anyone who has them and who wants to give their tickets to somebody else. So with that said, I do want to reemphasize that if you do not get your tickets in April, that is totally okay. I've heard stories of people just being offered free tickets literally like a week or 2 before the event. And going off of that, I have friends who've been offered tickets for multiple years, also again for free, and just like weren't able to make it work. And so you really just have to like keep your ear out and just know that the playa provides. And that is something that you will quickly come to learn as you get deeper into Burning Man and the culture around that. Now, speaking of building your Burning Man network and meeting people around that space, that brings me to the key topic number 2, which is figuring out what camp you want to go with to Burning Man. Hey, hippies. We hope you're enjoying the show so far. If you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple Podcasts and are having a good time, you need to come over to YouTube and subscribe to the Modern Day Hippie YouTube channel. We publish exclusive video content, and I promise you the experience is richer and more interesting. So if you're getting any value at all, stop what you're doing, open up the YouTube app, and subscribe at Modern Day Hippie. If you're watching this on YouTube and aren't subscribed yet, what are you doing? Go press subscribe. Thank you and enjoy the rest of the show. Now, a camp is literally any group of people. It can be as small as, I think, 2 people, up to some camps are pushing, a couple hundred folks, like 300, 400 people are probably the biggest camp. And every camp is registered through the Burning Man organization every year. They get a placement in the city by the organization. And most importantly, essentially every camp has a gift, as it's called, that they bring to the playa. As far as what these gifts are, some of the more common categories are sound camps, which sound camps will set up stages. They'll have insane like sound and lights and lasers, and they'll have world-class DJs come play on their art cars, on their stages at their camp. So for example, for me last year, I went with a pretty big sound camp. It was about 100 people. And we had this awesome stage set up where we literally had artists like Diplo and France Mercier and Rufus Du Sol play for our camp, which was freaking epic. Beyond that, another pretty common camp are food camps. So food camps will literally serve food. Some are specifically like breakfast oriented. So, they'll be serving free food like, 9 a.m. Up to whenever. Some will run little bars. And really, these are just like the tip of the iceberg. There is a camp doing virtually anything you can and cannot imagine. Some of the more famous ones on Playa are Dr. Bronner's, the soap company. They run a camp where it's literally a human car wash. So everybody gets naked and you go through the car wash and you basically get like a shower on Playa, which is fantastic. There's the infamous Orgy Dome, which everyone hears about at Burning Man. It exists, and a few camps like that do exist. But honestly, unless you're looking for it, actively seeking it out, you're not going to be like pressured to go into any orgy. It's really not like that. I wouldn't say that sex is any more accessible or visible at Burning Man than like in an average big city. At least that's been my experience. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you literally have camps that will do yoga sessions, TED Talks. There's camps that do math classes. Anyway, all this to say, like really the sky's the limit, and whatever your interest is, you can probably find a camp that is doing that as its gift to the playa. Now, the actual like gifts and in the theme of the camps is only one of the variables to consider. Honestly, a bigger one to consider is just like, what are the camps that you are interacting with? So this brings me to how you actually go about getting into a camp. And there's really no one way to do this. Every camp can have a completely different process for getting into it. Once the camp is registered with the Burning Man org, they can run however the hell they want, right? And so you have everything from camps that are just, a friend group or a couple families that are banding together to do this camp, up to, these big sound camps or these bigger operations that will literally have like online applications, like these big Google forms to apply to the camps and to get in, as opposed to some of the smaller camps I mentioned where it's just like, hey, are you like homies with these people? And so again, it's like whatever vibe you're going for, and however you want to try to get yourself to playa, probably as easily as possible in your first year before you really have that like strong burner network. There's different ways that you can go about it. So what I ultimately did was the camp that I went with, they literally had a online application. It was this extensive Google form. They posted it on the Burning Man subreddit, filled it out, and got accepted, which was pretty cool. And so that was pretty straightforward. There's also a directory of every camp that has been at past Burning Mans. So you can also go to this database and look. I think every year there are on the order of like, I want to say like 2,000 to 4,000 camps or something like that. It is a very large number. And you can go in these databases or it's really just one database on the Burning Man website. And you can look up certain keywords like, hey, if you're really into board games, there's a camp that does that. If you're really into tea houses, there are, I think, multiple camps that run tea houses on Playa. And usually those camps on the database, they'll have like a contact email or social media or something where you can literally reach out and be like, hey, I think your camp's really dope. Like, I'd love to come help out at Burning Man. Now, the key with a lot of these camps is that they do expect you to be involved to a certain extent. That is really the spirit of Burning Man. And there are a handful of camps that are what are called plug and play camps, where it's like you pay like above average camp dues. They'll give you a bunch of amenities, by the camp, and you might not have to do as much work. But that's kind of against the spirit of Burning Man. Though, if you want to do it that way, like, by all means, go for it. I will say though, for the average camp, they will expect at least that you do a couple volunteer shifts while you're on Playa. So I know at my camp, like I did 3 different volunteer shifts over the course of the week in totally different capacities. One was as like a stage manager kind of person. One was helping make some food that we gave out. And one was like a trash sweep of the area, which is a really important one. Some camps will also have opportunities to go in early or stay a little bit late after the event to help with setup, takedown. And that's where you might get some of those steward sale tickets or things like that, where your camp will have that you can buy at cost, essentially, just to like get yourself to the event. That also reminds me of something that I want to mention about tickets, which is never pay more than the tickets are actually worth. And usually like burners will never upcharge each other for tickets. If they do, I think it's kind of shitty. Pretty much it's always at cost. You also don't have to worry about insane StubHub or Ticketmaster fees, which is just complete bullshit. And luckily you don't really have to deal with that. Another big pro of going with a camp is that in every camp, there will always be, some percentage of people that don't have tickets yet. And so everyone in the camp will very much kind of band together and help each other find tickets. So, once you get accepted to a camp or whatever, you decide you're going with a camp, they'll keep an eye out on tickets. If you don't have one, they'll give you an opportunity to buy that ticket. Again, almost always at cost. It really should be at cost. Now, I do also want to mention that you are absolutely not obligated to go with a camp. So a decent amount of Black Rock City is allocated to just open camping, where it's like you could literally pull up on a motorcycle with like a tent strapped to the back and whatever provisions and post up in open camping and have that be your situation. I will say that is doing Burning Man on hard mode, and going with a camp, especially your first year, I think will make it a lot easier to not only have that network initially, but most camps offer various kinds of amenities. Basic ones are like a very basic power grid. So a lot of camps will get generators where like at the very least you can charge your phone and small electronics, things like that. And then some of the bigger camps literally have full power grids where you can plug an RV into it and literally have your RV powered the entire week. Some camps will do their own like private toilets because otherwise the only option are the porta potties. Some camps will do a camp shower. Really, again, there's no consistent way to do it. It really just comes down to the camp. And so something to consider and ask when you're looking at camps is seeing what their amenities are. The final thing to keep in mind with camps is virtually every camp has some dues. So that's what you're paying to the camp. And as far as I know, all of these dues are just like pooling people's money so that you can get those amenities, that shower, that generator, etc. I'd say the average camp dues are in the $200 to $400 per person range. So not too bad considering the cost of the base tickets, but really it'll depend on the amenities of the camp itself. Some camps will literally go up into the tens of thousands. And these are definitely the more like plug and play camps where you don't have to bring anything. Basically, they'll provide you food, water, like the food will be like a private chef. They'll literally give you an RV stocked with like a costume drawer, right? That's one total extreme. And then there's a middle ground where you'll see like the 1,000 to 2,000 range, which is also not as common as the, let's say, 200 to 400, but the $1,000 to $2,000 camps will probably have like bigger amenities, or they might be a bigger camp that's, maybe a sound camp where they kind of need that money to also help with their like stage setup, things like that, where like, you kind of get to be a little bit of a part of making that experience. But the dues, again, it's really like choose your own adventure, find a camp that you vibe with, and then go from there. Now, Last and not least, in terms of the camps, and honestly, the most important is finding a camp that you do vibe with. And this really begs the question of how do you figure that out? And this is where I think it's incredibly helpful to get involved in your local Burning Man community. And when I say get involved, that might sound like a lot of work. And if you want to go really deep on it and build that network early, I think that is one of the most like powerful things you can do, not only for Burning Man, but honestly for just meeting like kick-ass people, no matter what industry you're in. You'll probably meet some badass people. Actually, you'll definitely meet some badass people. But it can also just be as simple as going to like one or two events. You'll likely meet people. You'll see a couple camps, what they're about. And so the best way to go about this is if you live in any medium sized city or up, there's 100% a Burning Man community there. You can probably just Google like Burning Man in the name of your city or like burners. There's always Facebook groups, things like that. And the best way to kind of meet some of those people is a lot of camps, especially local ones, will throw fundraisers. And these could be everything from, like small parties, DJ sets. It can also be things like, like cold plunge, yoga sessions, things like that. Really, again, it comes down to the vibe of the camp. And usually these events, they'll have, like pretty cheap tickets, and all of the money from those ticket sales do go to funding the camp and helping to pay for some of those amenities. And usually camp fundraisers will really heat up from April onwards. And the closer you get to the end of August, which is when Burning Man happens every year, the more fundraisers you'll have. I would say realistically, if you want to kind of plan for trying to meet some camps, like June, July is the best time to do that. Like there'll be more fundraisers then. Like camps will really be in full swing in terms of like planning logistics for Burning Man. So probably have some fundraisers too. And then by the time it's August, there might be some fundraisers still. But, at that point, it's very much like hands on the ground. But by that point, it's very much, boots on the ground and really planning in full force for Burning Man. Because, boy, if you think it's a lot of work to just get yourself as one human to Playa, man, getting a whole camp with whether it's a stage, whether it's a kitchen setup, man, that is a colossal undertaking. When you're at these events, you can usually get a really good vibe of what the camp is like, what it's about, and what the people are like. Usually events will be one camp, but they might be a bunch of camps put together. And don't be afraid to, ask about the camp itself. Just try to educate yourself. Like in my experience, burners have been incredibly helpful, incredibly friendly. Just if you're curious and you're genuine about wanting to know more about the camp or even Burning Man itself, people will be very friendly and will do everything they can to help get you there if that's a goal that you have. That covers just about everything in terms of camps. The final thing I'll leave you with about the camping key points is that, again, there's no predefined or same way that any camp operates. Each one operates in a different way. It's literally decided by people who run the camp. And even in the way the camp is run, you can also get kind of a good sense of, is it more of like a chill family friends vibe? Is it more of like this, party operation with like, sound camp vibes, music, whatever? And really, the world is your oyster. It really just does kind of put the onus on you to find a camp that you might vibe with, get in touch with them, whether it's, online through that database of camps that I mentioned, or going into your local community to fundraisers and things like that and meeting people IRL.
You're at the club and the music is thumping, but you've got nothing left in the tank. So what do? Sniff some cacao. Yup, you heard that right. Sniff some cacao. It's the hottest new trend in the club and party scene. One bum-sized sniff of raw chocolatey powder contains the caffeine equivalent to a half cup of coffee, and boom, it hits instantly. And the best part is you can now sniff cacao anytime, anywhere. Right out in the open, in front of the DJ booth or the stage, even at the VIP table with your friends. Now, how does that happen without drawing unwanted attention? Snogo's spring-loaded bump straws make it possible. These classy, triple mirror polished bump straws are the safest, most discreet way to enjoy sniffing cacao. In fact, you've most likely already seen people wearing Snogo's bump straws as pendants around their necks without even knowing it. Discover why sniffing cacao using Snogo bump straws is being called the biggest revolution in partying since the invention of rock and roll. Jump on over to snogostraws.com to learn more. That's SNOGOSTRAWS.com and use discount code MDH15 at checkout for 15% off your entire order.
The third and final high level key point that I want to cover is more just the materials and logistics of like, all right, you have tickets, you're signed up with a camp, you've paid your dues. Now, what the hell do you actually need to think about to like get to Playa and survive out there? More importantly, the two highest level subpoints that I want to talk about in this is your housing, which is super important, and then your bicycle. So first off, for housing, the majority of people who go to Burning Man, they go camping. And honestly, if we're just really breaking it down, Burning Man is literally just camping in the desert for a week. It does not have to be more complicated than that if you don't want it to be, and it's really not rocket science. If you are camping, there are two types of tents that burners swear by. They've been tried and tested. The most common one are called shift pods. So shift pods were actually invented as emergency shelter after natural disasters and things like that. They're cool. They look like these big silver kind of like hexagon looking things. I think they're 10 feet by 10 feet. So they're quite large, can easily fit two people in there and all of your stuff. And a lot of them are kind of the silver material on the outside because it's reflective, and that'll help it keep a little bit cooler in the shift pod. The second tent that is recommended is called a Kodiak tent. This is just kind of a really high quality canvas tent that is also quite large and very durable. And it's important, like when you're out there, just because of the dust and the winds and the dust storms, like you do need a very proper tent. I would not recommend a, $150 Coleman tent that you buy at like Academy or Dick's. That is playing with fire, in my opinion. Now, if you are doing tent camping, it's super important to consider, number one, a shade structure. Almost every camp that I have ever heard of, one of the basic amenities they offer are shade structures. So these will be, imagine like massive, like easy ups, just like overhead shade that goes over your tent. Because if you don't have a shade structure like that, your tent will get absolutely cooked. And during the day, if you want to go rest, which you're probably going to be out pretty late and you will definitely want to sleep during the day a decent amount, like you will be just absolutely fucked if you don't have a shade structure. Camp should take care of that, but just double check again when you're looking at those amenities. And number two is some sort of cooling system. So honestly, a lot of people will find ways to bring like portable AC units out there, essentially these big boxes that you will plug into your camp's power grid, which again, like vast majority of camps do offer a power grid that at least can run those ACs. There are AC units that I think are basically designed to like fit on like a shift pod window essentially. And I do not camp in a shift pod, so I can't speak to that, but there's definitely plenty of information out there on Reddit and just on the internet. Like there's definitely information to help you figure that out. Similar situation goes with the Kodiak tent, but really, like a tent is the most affordable way to do it. And, if you're flying in, you can probably bring a tent in your bag. Honestly, a lot of camps will kind of like offer you to like, not a lot. Some camps might have extra shift pods that they'll offer to like rent to you as well. Shift pods are very common. I'd say they're a bit of a commodity, especially around like the Black Rock City and Reno area, essentially. So it shouldn't be too hard to get your hands on one. However, for something like the AC unit, if you're not driving in, you will need to be a little bit resourceful on how you get that AC unit there. Maybe you buy one at Walmart and then you return it after the event. Maybe you find someone driving from wherever you're at to get it to Playa. Actually, even in my case, like I drove from my city to Burning Man, and I had a buddy who was like, "Hey, can I pay you $250 to bring this big AC unit up to Burning Man and back?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." And so again, there's like no rules, there's no defined way to do things. You just kind of got to figure things out, and a lot of it is like, helping each other out. Honestly, once you're in a camp, like pretty much every camp will have conversations of like, hey, I'm coming in on this day at this time. I might have room to bring like one extra person or an extra suitcase. And it very much is this, collegial cooperative environment. And that's just another reason why I think going with a camp, especially your first year, is so helpful, because even if you don't have all of your bases covered going into the event, going with a camp, you have some people who are willing to help you. And even though one of the 10 principles of Burning Man is radical self-reliance, you will always forget something. And like I mentioned earlier, the playa will provide, and burners are the kind of folks where as long as you actually like did put in effort to being radically self-reliant. If you're a little bit short on water or you need an extra light or something, they will be willing to help you. Like it's not an every man for himself situation, and in a camp even more so. Like you are like a family in many ways. And so that's super important. The other option for housing, and definitely the more expensive one, is getting an RV. It can be anything from like one of the like Sprinter vans, like van life kind of things, all the way to like a proper like 30 plus foot RV that can sleep, 4 to 8 people. Obviously, an RV is going to be a lot more expensive, but a lot more comfortable. I did go in an RV last year, and if you can afford it, if you can swing it, I highly recommend going with an RV. It's going to give you more like access to the event, I would say. And that like when you do need to rest, you can rest comfortably. And that will give you more waking hours to experience everything you possibly can in the week that is Burning Man. I will say RVs, especially around Burning Man, are extremely expensive. So virtually every RV that is rentable in Reno, which is the closest city to Burning Man by far, Reno, Vegas, San Francisco, Sacramento, those RVs, like the owners or the companies, whether it's, a big company that you're renting from or the like, an outdoorsy RV share kind of thing, they know Burning Man happens. They know that Burning Man absolutely just fucks the shit out of any vehicle, out of anything mechanical, honestly, out of any object that you bring to Playa. And so the flat rate lately for RVs to go to Burning Man for the week is $10,000, which is egregious. It's a shit ton. I do not recommend people pay that. So you will have to do a bit of searching to see, can you get RV for a more normal price, which I'd say a more normal price for a week is like $2,000 to $4,000 if you're renting from an outdoorsy or an RV share. And there are definitely, some cities that are within a not abysmal drive to Burning Man, so I'm talking less than like 10 to 12 hours, where you can find some cheap RVs. You're gonna have to do a bit of research to figure out yourself where you can find that. Or if you're a buddy of mine, text me. But it's not that hard, just peruse the peer-to-peer RV rental websites. Those will always be cheaper than renting through like, one of these big like corporate Cruise America kind of things. And that will usually get you into a better spot. If you are going in an RV, it's important to just check what are the generator and the power kind of grids situation on your camp. And I would say like camps that have, medium to higher dues, they'll basically always have a power grid that you can just plug your RV in. But in that case, make sure that you communicate with your camp's power lead to make sure that you have the right plug and adapters and whatever to plug your RV into the grid itself. Cause there's like 2 main different types of plugs, I believe. And then some RVs are 30 amps, some are 50 amps, I believe again. And so you just need to make sure that you buy the right like power cord and you know what you need. And that's exactly what I did this past year is like I ordered this like 50-foot freaking thick ass cable off Amazon for my RV. I knew exactly what I was going to need to plug into the power grid. And that was super nice because then I got to have power the entire week, got to run the AC the whole week without having to use gas, fridge worked, didn't need to worry about coolers. And honestly, an RV just takes a lot of the more like the minutia and the planning stress out of getting yourself to Burning Man. So that's my piece on housing. Now, the second subpoint under this materials and logistics category is a bicycle. So having a bicycle at Burning Man is absolutely required, I would say. I cannot emphasize enough how Black Rock City is literally a city. It is a city of 80,000 people, and it is laid out over a map that I think the city itself is like 3 to 4 miles wide. Let's say around 4 miles, which if you wanted to walk across it would take you about an hour and a half. And then that's not even counting Deep Playa, which is where a lot of like our cars will go and stuff. You don't want to have to walk around Burning Man. It's a complete waste of time. So you absolutely need a bike, and everyone at Burning Man has a bike or some sort of creative wheel device that they've either built themselves or they've bought. I've seen people get around Burning Man on like one wheels, and that can be a little bit tougher. I would say like a bike is the base thing to do. So needing a bike, you also need to figure out how to get a bike to Burning Man or at Burning Man. There are a couple options for this. So number one, if you already have a bike at home, you can treat it kind of like I was talking about the AC unit for the shift pods. Like see if you can have a friend like bring it up for you. Some major cities will literally have these like shipping containers that will get sent to Burning Man, and you can just like pay some money to kind of get an allocation in that container. So you could put your bike in there and get it there. It is recommended generally that you have like a mountain bike sort of bike. All these like cheap like road cruisers and stuff. The sand and the conditions might really fuck with it. And so that's just not something you want to worry about. Like you just need like a decent quality bike. And mountain bikes are really perfect for it because some parts of the playa can be a little bit bumpy to go over. Other options, especially if you're flying in, are number one, just buy a used bike off of marketplace in whatever city you're flying into and put it in your RV or like on a bike rack or whatever. Or also as you're driving into Burning Man from, I believe, the Reno side mainly, there are like companies that will literally rent out bicycles for you to just use during the burn. They charge quite a bit for, I think, the value of having a bike for 1 week. But obviously, you don't have to worry about it until you're basically outside the door. There's a few companies that do this. If you just Google like Burning Man, like bike rentals, you can probably reserve something in advance. And also as you drive through to the event, like you are driving through the middle of nowhere into somewhere that is even more the middle of nowhere where this event happens. And so all along the road as you're driving in, like there will be vendors, people will be selling cool outfits, lights, bicycles, things like that. And so that is an option, right? You're just probably going to be paying more for that convenience. So just keep that in mind. But otherwise, again, it comes down to resourcefulness and figuring out how you want to get a bike for yourself on Playa. And it is very much a slider between paying money or putting in some more time and effort to find a used bike on marketplace or something like that. A more common trend on Playa the last couple of years has been e-bikes, which are, those really nice electric bikes with thick tires that can go like super fast. E-bikes are super nice to have if you can have them, but I really don't think they're necessary. Like, as far as biking distances go, it's really not that far. I don't think it's bad to go around Playa on a bicycle. And the e-bikes, obviously, they're a lot easier, but they're a lot heavier, and you have to worry about charging it. And also, like, bike theft does happen at Burning Man. And so those are definitely the way more valuable bikes because some of them can cost, thousands of dollars a piece. But a thing to consider is that these e-bikes can go super fast. But for all wheeled vehicles on Playa, technically the rule is that you cannot go over 5 miles per hour, like anywhere in Burning Man. That's whether you're on a bike. That's whether you're driving your car through the city, like to your campsite. That's whether you're a art car or a mutant vehicle, as it's called. And I will say, like, plenty of people speed their e-bikes, but it can also be super dangerous. Like the worst accidents that happen at Burning Man tend to be e-bike accidents where you're just going super fast and maybe someone at night isn't wearing enough lights. You don't see them in time. And those accidents can be super gnarly. And so, if you're fucked up and you're driving in pitch black with not a lot of light, it's just, even having the option to speed is a little bit scary. So keep that in mind. Outside of the housing and the bicycle pieces, obviously there's a lot of like small logistics and things that I could cover, whether like what kind of clothes to bring, how much water, what kind of food, et cetera, et cetera. Honestly, those are all like pretty basic. If you've ever done any kind of camping, like you'll probably, be fairly well equipped. And also there are literally dozens of Burning Man packing list blog posts out on the internet. Just literally Google for that term and you'll find various packing lists. I know for me, like there's a decent amount of gear that I had. And so I, kind of made a shopping list of like, okay, what do I still need to buy? And like a spreadsheet, and we're just kind of keeping track of it there. And so I kind of made my own personal packing list of what I wanted. Like, for example, for me, like I didn't care that much about like costumes or dressing up differently every day. So like my clothing piece was super simple and lightweight. Whereas some people will go all out. They'll have a completely different day and night fit for every day of Burning Man. And obviously, you're going to need a lot more work to like find the pieces that you want or make them or, and figure out how to get them to Playa. As far as food, like coolers, definitely recommended. The only thing you can actually purchase on Playa is ice. And so a lot of camps will do shifts where someone will go get ice and distribute it to the camp. The ice is like, obviously it's more expensive than what you'd pay at like a gas station. I don't think it's terrible. But that's the thing. But honestly, my point is with all of these smaller things, information exists out there and it's also fairly logical. Again, remember that at the end of the day, Burning Man is really just camping in the desert. So if you think about it from that level, I think it becomes a lot less intimidating. And for a lot of these minor things, like you can definitely ask around, you can research, like there's plenty of information out there and you should be totally good with that. So I've talked about getting tickets, joining a camp, and how to think about both your housing and your bicycle, which are kind of the two key logistical components that I see. As far as resources and further education, because I know like when I was learning about Burning Man, I was consuming every piece of content I could about it. And honestly, a small part of me regrets that because I think the less you can know about the actual event itself and kind of the vibes and the energy, the more impactful it will be when you actually get there and hear about it. But at the same time, like seeing those YouTube videos, like the compilations of Burning Man, definitely got me super hyped up to go as well. So it could go either way. It just depends on knowing yourself. I'd say the best resource by far is just, again, talking to and meeting other burners. Like burners are super kind and helpful. Like I would say like 99.9% of them. And after I kind of consumed everything I could on the internet about Burning Man, which honestly, there wasn't that much stuff. There are a lot of questions I still had. Like I probably had over a dozen hours of conversations with burners, leading up to the event, across half a dozen people, just asking all my questions, hearing about their experiences, things like that. And so that was by far the most educational thing about like, hey, like what's something that like you didn't bring that you wish you did, or like something that, you wouldn't have expected to need, kind of how to approach the event, both from a logistical perspective and from a mental perspective, because that is also a massive part of the event. And I can also talk about that in a future episode if you guys are curious. Now, for more concrete details, if you want to go down the rabbit hole right now, the best resource I would say is by the Burning Man org itself. It's called the Survival Guide. So every year, the Burning Man org puts out the Survival Guide before the event. If you go to the event, they actually give you a physical, like little booklet pamphlet thing, which is really cool. But also they have the PDF of every year's pamphlet on the Burning Man website. So the URL for that, I'll put it down in the description, but it's survival.burningman.org. And this is kind of the whole gamut of like, literally, if this was the only resource you had before going into Burning Man and you followed it like closely, you would be fine, right? It's a little bit light, but it's just like high level logistics. Most importantly, it walks you through more of like the culture and the vibes of the event, like the 10 principles, how to carry yourself around Playa and what is, important to the energy and the vibe of being there. And they have good like logistical information. There's like different options that the Burning Man org has actually created to get to Playa. So there's like a bus service that runs from the Reno airport. There's all sorts of stuff, but all of that is in the survival guide. And that will, I think, answer probably a lot of questions that you may still have after this. The second and final link that I'll include is a YouTube video from this van life couple. They're super cute, about their experience going to Burning Man. And so they give a good breakdown of honestly a lot of things that I covered, but just if you want kind of a second voice, a second opinion on how to plan for Burning Man, that's a great resource to do as well. So check out that link in the description. Lastly, I do want to give you guys kind of some budget expectations for Burning Man, because I know that's always a big question. So we talked about tickets. So just the ticket to get yourself there is probably $650 to $700. Then the vehicle pass is $250, though, unless you're going alone, you're splitting that with people. You have your camp dues, which I would say average are probably are in the $200 to $400 range. And then beyond that, what you spend is completely up to you. So it's like, are you buying these really nice, like freeze dried meals? Are you buying a lot of like outfits, things like that? I'd say a reasonable budget for Burning Man after your actual tickets is $1,500 a person. I think you could get it to like $1,000 or under if you really want to. And then obviously you can spend as much as you want, but it's really knowing yourself, knowing, how comfortable do you want to be out there? How much tough conditions and bullshit are you willing to put up with? But I think $1,000 to $1,500 after you buy the Burning Man tickets is pretty fair. And I would say for the average camp dues, like that's including the camp dues of $200 to $400, which I think is really reasonable. And those camps tend to be, a more medium size. They'll be pretty chill, good vibes. You won't have a lot of the drama and stress that can often come with being part of a bigger camp. Now, if you've listened this whole way, thank you guys so much. Honestly, put a lot of prep and research and my own experience this episode. So I genuinely hope this was helpful. If there's anything that I miss, any questions that you still have, feel free to leave a comment, like message us on any of our socials. We'll be more than happy to help get any of you guys out there on Playa, and generally hope to see some modern day hippies out there, if not this year, then in future years to come. Thank you guys for listening, and that's today's pod.
You've been listening to Modern Day Hippie. As you exit the portal, we have just one small ask of you. If you learned something new today, had a laugh, or resurfaced a drug story of your own, we want to hear about it. Drop us a comment on YouTube and show us some love on your favorite podcasting platforms. Internet algorithms really dog on us because of the topics that we discuss, so your support goes even further here than you might think. We'll catch you next week.